Hey, so glad you're tuning in today. Decided to go live with my guest, Oliver. It's really exciting. We're going to talk about, just ready to dive into faith and just freedom and relationships and all that good stuff. So make sure you share this post with people on your page, on his page, and let's dive into this sucker. He's in the green room right now. This is a fun thing to do on StreamYard, I think, is saying, hey, Oliver, you ready back there in the green room? Give me a thumbs up. He's got it ready. All right, cool. There he is. I
What's
see him.
happening?
There he is, man. Ever since how many months ago were we in Washington together?
Man, that was back in what was that? Back in February.
Was
So
it
it's
February?
yeah,
Jeez.
it's been a few months now. So that was back
Yeah,
in February.
yeah,
Yeah, had a good time out there, man.
yeah. It was definitely a good time. So, well, hey, Oliver, welcome to the Addiction, Freedom, and Faith podcast. And real excited to just share your passion with seeing other men and couples find freedom in their life. And it's just awesome. You're a good guy. You're one of the good guys out there doing great work. So, how you
Man,
doing today,
appreciate it.
Oliver?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I was looking forward to. I know we had talked about this a little while back, man. I was looking forward to connecting with you again and being on the show, man. You are talk about somebody doing great work. Like you're doing phenomenal work in the space, man. So it's an honor to be here and get to chop it up with you today.
There you go, man. I'll send you $100 for that plug. Thanks a
I
bunch.
appreciate it.
Send me your Venmo or your Zelle or whatever the heck it is out
Indeed,
there.
indeed.
So,
It's a done deal.
oh man. So, hey, tell our listeners and viewers, depending on how you're tapping in, whether it's on video or on the podcast show, um, what are you passionate about helping guys with and couples with?
Whew, man, there's how much time we got?
We got as much time as you want because it's my show and I can do what I want. So
Hey,
hey,
that'll work. So let me all right, let me make sure and let me take your advice. You said to share it. Let me make sure I'm sharing it with my folks too.
oh yeah,
So what am I passionate about as it relates to men and as it relates to couples? The thing that I and my wife and I tag team this quite often. The thing we're passionate about is seeing relationships thrive and seeing when men win in every area of their lives. And it's man, we live in a day and age now where and the pandemic really brought this out, right? We saw that there are a number of relationships that were just surviving, number of relationships that were not thriving. They're just surviving. And listen, I'll be transparent. Even my wife and I in the pandemic discovered some things about ourselves and some areas that we weren't even being intentional about growing in, and so our goal in everything that we do, everything that we share, we're very transparent about ourselves. Our goal is to help couples communicate without frustration and judgment, communicate on an extraordinary level, to recognize, manage, and recover from conflict in record time, and to build a holistic, intimate bond. And then with the men's space, man, I wrote a book for men, and so I'm passionate about seeing men thrive. I know the experience that I had, and shameless plug, my T-shirt. That's the goal. The whole goal of everything that we do is on my T-shirt, man. 2020 before hindsight. I've learned some things in hindsight, man. There's some things that I learned the hard way. I wish I had learned the easy way.
mm.
So our goal is if we can provide at least one person with some level of clarity on the front end before they make some decisions that could throw off the trajectory of their lives, we are really happy and thankful to God for that opportunity to do so.
Man, I love it. And I love your shirt, Hindsight 2020, right? You wrote your book in 2020 and it's called Overcoming the Man Laws,
Indeed.
right? And they can find out. I had your website up there a second ago. I just want people to always tap in. Like, the baby might start crying for some people, or you're listening in your show in your office and someone walks in, whatever. There's the
Yep.
website right there.
There it
If you
is.
want to pop it up. It's
Yep.
there. No, there's the book. Nice, man. That's a great
Oh,
author right there. You always got to have your book handy. It's like
indeed.
I can
Overcoming
sit
the man loss.
I can sit there and be like, which one? We could deal some cards here. We got this
Hey, I
book.
love it. Yeah, man. I'm about
Which
to
one
say,
you
man,
want?
you got a nice little library
Yeah,
happening
it's
yourself, man.
happening. It's happening. But your website, for those that aren't seeing this on video, is www.denoli.org.
That's correct.
Now, what the heck does that stand for? There's got to be something behind that.
There is. So Denali.org. Denali is simply the first three letters of my wife's name and the first three letters of my name. My wife's name is Denise. My name is Oliver. So Denali.org and that came out of many that are listening and watching right now are familiar with the Denali package, which is spelled differently. Um, and the quick version of that story is when we first got married. We've been married for going on 23 years now. When we first got married, we said, one day we're going to get the Yukon Denali truck. At that time, I think the very first Yukon SUV with the Denali package was coming out. That was back in 2000 or 1999, somewhere around there.
All right.
So we said one day we're going to get that truck. We're going to change the spelling. We're going to take the A out and put an O. So that was that.
There it is.
Never got the truck. Fast forward years later, when we first started doing marriage work, we had a different name. It was Marriage is Our Ministry. And I was trying to get into the corporate space, and I was talking to a very renowned psychologist who is like the lead psychologist for big corporations. He said, "Man, I love what you're doing." He said, "If you want to stay with the faith-based organization, keep the name." He said, "My suggestion, I'm not telling you have to do this, but my suggestion is if you want to broaden it, because we also work with small corporate teams, if you want to broaden it into that space, it's going to be tough. It won't be impossible, but it'll be tough having ministry in your name because there's some corporations that will shy away from that no matter how good you are."
Yeah.
So we toyed with that for a while. I tucked that in my back pocket for, a long while. And then finally we were having some conversations like, you know what? The name is not going to take away who we are. People know listening to us off the bat, it's going to come out at some point that we're people of faith at some point. We just can't help it. Right.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and figure out a name change. So we're racking our brain for a name change, and then ding, ding, ding. Wait a minute. We've had this name for eons.
Wow.
Let's just use that. And so that's where Denali comes from. So
there you go. I like the fact that her name is first and your name is second.
Yes.
Now that's a good marriage principle, which we'll probably dive into that too a little bit here. But
and it's significant. It's not. Yeah. It's not happenstance. It's right. Significant.
Yeah, and those are the important things. It's the intention behind the name. Yeah. So therefore, I had to ask that question too, because I know we hung out in Washington when we were speaking at the Phoenix conference with our buddy Brent. That was a great conference, and just kind of brought it to the guys kind of straight to their heart and bringing impact and change. But there has to be a reason that you care about broken relationships. What's your story a little bit, Oliver? Tell us a little about your journey.
There is a reason that I care about relationships, man, and seeing relationships thrive, right? So I got married. I'll be honest. I got married for very selfish reasons. Very selfish reasons. And as such, it affected the trajectory of our marriage in terms of how well things were going in those first 2 years, 18 months, 2 years time frame. And I went through.
Hold on, wait, just say we have to. What's the selfish reason? Let's not leave people hanging. Let's throw it out there.
Here's so I got married for the what's in it for me, right? So I knew there was going to be a whole lot of sex. I knew there was going to be, somebody who would kind of look after me and, maybe even make me look good in certain ways. Like it was all about what I was going to get out of it. It wasn't about what I was contributing to this union at all. It had nothing to do with what I was contributing. It was all about, okay, this marriage is going to benefit me in XYZ ways. And that's how I went about it. Coming out of a very singular mindset. And there's something that I talk to guys often about is making sure that you are working on your self-development that allows you to make more of a smooth transition from a singular mindset to a mindset where duality has to reign. Because if you're going into a union with someone, now you're talking about teamwork. You're talking about camaraderie. You're talking about becoming one. You're talking about leaving and cleaving if we're coming from the biblical perspective. And I did not do that. I did not make that transition. I went into this situation where duality should reign with a singular mindset. And as such, I was doing things that a singular mindset person would do, right? I'm still trying to live on both sides of the fence. Wasn't really, paying a lot of attention to growing, to becoming one, just very, very selfish. And it showed.
Mm.
It
Wow.
had every effect that you think it would have. It had, right? So I understand what that's like, and I tell often there's this talk that I do sometimes that's more geared toward guys, and you guys got to hear some of that story when we were in Washington,
Yeah.
where man, I coming through college before I got married, just a lot of disappointments, various things that kind of built up this thing in me that caused me to be the person that I was when I went into marriage, and I had this awakening moment,
Mm.
this slap in the face, punch in the chest, kick in the back kind of moment about 18 months in. And I was coming in real late at night one night because that was kind of the norm for me at this point in my life. Like even though I was still married, I was still kind of hanging out and doing my thing and that kind of thing. Came in late one night, and I'm kind of fast forwarding through the story, but came in
Yeah.
late
Yeah.
or early one morning, if you want to call it that. It was about 4:30 in the morning. And at that time, I was still reading this devotion from Max Lucado. And I'm a musician, but for years of my life, I've been a musician since I was small up until recently. And I was still playing for churches. I was still doing all that stuff at that time, but I was still kind of living like a wild child. Um, Came in, read that devotion. I don't remember what it was about. However, I still have that book to this day.
Wow.
You could read the devotion for the day, and then it had a question that it would ask, and it gave you some lines where you could journal. And I would literally write stuff every time I read that journal. So this night, no different, or morning, no different. The only thing that happens differently is as I'm reading this thing, man, it just hits me, man, and I know it was God talking to me. This thought hits me. I had two small girls at the time, and the question was, if those two little girls that are sleeping down the hall from you right now, if they grow up and they bring home this current version of you as a boyfriend or a potential husband, how are you going to feel about that?
Ooh, man.
Now, I tell people often I'm a recovering hothead, right? So there was a time in my life where I could go from 0 to 100 in no seconds, right? So in my mind, I was like, oh, that ain't gonna be no problem, no problem.
Mm.
Only one of us survived that scenario, and I'm surviving, so no problem.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The very next question is the thing that I remember it clearly like it was yesterday. We had a green sofa, and we had this chair that my son called the thinking chair because it looked kind of like the chair from is it Door or one of those things. I can't remember. Blues Clues or something. It looked like the thinking
Sure.
chair, right?
Yeah.
So I remember this thing hit me. This next question hit me so hard in the chest that I actually sat back. And that question was, okay, if that's how you feel about it, what are you going to do about you? And I didn't have an answer to that question. Here's what I know. Here's what I realized, though, in that moment. I was like, I got to do something. I
Wow.
was like, if this relationship is going to last, if I'm going to become the husband that I'm supposed to be, if I'm going to become the father that I'm supposed to be, or at least be tracking in the right direction, because nobody's perfect, but if I'm going to be at least tracking in the right direction, I got to do something different. And it's got to start today.
Man,
So
what a
that,
moment.
yeah, I'm telling you, I remember it. And I talk about it quite often. You guys heard it in Washington. Other people have heard it too. I've told this story several times. That Now, did that change me immediately in the moment? No. But did it put me on a course? Yes. So it put me on a lifelong course to make sure that I am intentional about becoming the person, one, that God wants me to be, and two, the person that would be beneficial to this family unit that He placed me in. So
Man.
that's been the ongoing journey, man. I'm still kicking and pushing to this day.
Wow. I mean, what a it, just to be there to watch that, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like a movie scene.
Yeah, bro.
And you're looking down, it's kind of like, what's going to happen here? So, how long did it take for your bride to notice a change in you?
That's a great question. I'd have to
Let's get her
ask
on
her.
the mic. Let's get her on the
Yeah, I'm
mic
about
right
to say
now.
I'd have to ask her that question. She's upstairs in the middle of something. But I would say after that moment happened, and I'm going to say, if I'm remembering correctly, we got married in 2000. That moment happened in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. That began a journey for me. In 2004, we moved. We were in Michigan at the time. In 2004, which is 2 years after that moment, we moved to Maryland, which is where I'm from originally. And I would say that more signs began to show when we got to Maryland, that I was at least walking in the right direction.
That's good. I actually just had a visual, right? You're packing all the boxes, you're getting ready to move to Maryland, and you're packing the last box, and you go, wait a minute. Old Oliver, he can't fit in this box. You gotta stay back here in
He
Michigan,
can't
bro.
go.
And
He
off
can't
he
go.
went.
And,
And
and listen, full transparency, I wanted to leave Michigan for a lot of reasons, but there was one reason that I was like, listen, the beauty of this, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into moving to Maryland, but there was one thing I knew. I was like, okay, I'm surrounded here by all of the things that got me to the point that I'm at, which is the very thing that I'm trying to about face from.
wow.
So me being somewhere new, I felt like, at least in my mind, I don't know if I was correct or not at that time that I was thinking it, but in my mind, I was like, change of scenery has to mean change in other areas as well.
Mm,
It's got to. At least that's what I was hoping,
yeah.
and so thankfully, yes, that has been that was significant in my journey as well.
Yeah, well, relationships are hard. I remember when I was in my late addiction, towards the end of my addiction, I got married to a good alcoholic woman, and I was living in Texas, and we were going to move to Indiana. And I thought,
Mhm.
man, if we just move to Indiana and get away from her friends and my friends, we got a fresh start. Here we go, right? And we get to Indiana,
Mhm.
and as you know, the problem was both of us went with us, and there we were,
Right.
screwed up in Indiana, right? And it was just kind of like, man, and then God's divine intervention happens in our lives and all
Mhm.
those kind of things too to really shake things up. So here you are now. You're an author, you're a coach, you're a speaker. You and your wife do stuff together, and y'all go to your website. And I can tell you, when you go to the website, you can be like, I used to hear people say, "Man, Oliver married up." And then I heard I heard a podcast show once, and it was like, why take away from our greatness sometimes too, when we
Right.
say, "Oh man, she married up," and it was like, "Hey, but you know what? We both married up." Or
Yeah,
so
man.
it's like, man, we both. I mean, it's like we sometimes play down that part a little bit just
We
to
do.
build someone else up, but then we're just kind of shaming ourselves a little bit too. So here you are, doing some couples work. And like I said, you got coaching practice, speaking, author, like you're out there just hitting stages and just doing it. So what are you seeing? Okay, I'll ask this in a couple different parts, right?
Okay.
What are you seeing after you and your wife share from stage together or at a conference? What are guys coming up and saying to you afterwards?
Man, often what we're hearing is just the sense of almost like this exhale moment of sorts, where
Mm,
people are like, wow, okay, so you felt that way too, or you experienced that too, or you were like that too, and now some things are different with you. Okay, that's hopeful. So we get a lot of that. We get a lot of that, man. You know what? We experienced that too, or we didn't communicate well, or we're not communicating, and it's almost like you kind of give folk this aha moment of, hey, wait a minute, you can thrive. Like, you don't have to necessarily live in a space where you're consistently just surviving, right? And to speak to what you just said earlier about when you and your wife, you're like, we're going to move, and but the old people moved with us. Quite often, what we don't do, the mistake that I made and a lesson that I've learned, is that you have to change your perspective around things.
mm,
You have to change your perspective, because typically your approach is aligned to your perspective.
So how do
So
you
if you,
change your perspective? Like, how do you start doing that as a person
man,
that's
there,
confused and stuck?
that now that can be a process of sorts depending on where you are on your journey, right? There's some people that you may have to get around some folk. You may have to shadow your future. You may have to get around some folk who are living the way you want to live, who are becoming what you want to become, who are uh, their ideologies are ones that you aspire to. Sometimes you got to get around folk and get that into your system and be inundated with that level of influence. Sometimes you have to just dig in and look into yourself, because often you have to actually make the decision in your mind that you actually want to do something different, right? Because what I did in the beginning, right, I was good at this. I could change my behavior on a dime. So if
Wow.
I was like, okay, Rob and his friends are, this caliber of folks, and I know I'm going to be hanging out with Rob and his friends today, then we're going to act like Rob and his friends today. So I'm going to be good, right? But my mindset would never change. I was good at changing my behavior, but behavioral change without mindset change is not sustainable long term. And part of it is me waking up one day and literally saying, I want to do something different. And sometimes you got to just, we're people of faith, man. So you understand sometimes you got to be like, okay, God, hey, listen, either you do it or it don't get done.
Mm,
And I would like for you to do it. And that's all I got right now. I
man.
don't have no other answers. I don't have the path laid out, none of that. So when I had that wake up moment at 4:30 in the morning, I did not have the answer to that question. But what I did know is I need to do something different, and I'm deciding that I want to do something different. So that's the first thing. Decide. You got to decide that you want to do something different. And often people don't make that decision because they don't know what is coming next.
Yeah.
Because I can't map out the journey, and it doesn't even look like the journey it's even possible to map out that kind of journey. I'm like, well, don't worry about it. I'm good. So I never
Mm,
make the decision. So part of that is making the decision, man, and then there's a systematic process, man. Listen, we're again. I'm not gonna uh, I'm not going to play this down. You gotta get God in your life, and you got to get around some folk who are willing to help you travel this journey. And those are some of the things that I had to do in order to do that. And those are some of the things that we offer for the folk that we are blessed to serve. We're like, listen, man, you don't have to have all the answers. You don't got to have this journey mapped out. All you got to do is make up your mind that, yes, I would like to jump in the car with you.
mm, man. Wow. But Oliver, I can do this without God. I don't need God in my life. Why do I need God? Why can't I just change on my own and be a good, better person? Oliver, come on. Why do I need God? That's what answer
Hey,
that question.
we hear that all the time. And
Yeah,
let me give you the controversial answer, and then
please.
I'll give you what I think about it. The controversial answer is that the the laws that govern, or the principles I should say, that govern phenomenal relationships, the principles that govern healthy living, the principles that govern your ability to manage conflict and give you the capacity to build bonds. If you follow those principles, they're going to work for you, because the beautiful thing about what God designed is that he reigns on the just and the unjust, right? So if you follow the principles of giving, for example, give and it shall be given back to you, pressed down, shaken together, that's going to happen, right? If you follow the principles of in Ephesians where it says don't let bitter and unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, you're going to have wholesome communication. It's going to happen. Here's the advantage though of having God in your life. The advantage of having God in your life is like me consistently having a answer guide to a test. So let me put it in real world example, right? Sometimes when you're doing homeschooling, you get all of the lessons in one box, and then there's another box that comes with the teacher's guides in them. And so the parents or whoever is the person who's responsible for teaching these lessons, they have these guides at their disposal. So whenever they run into an issue, instead of racking their brains around it and trying to figure out how to do it, they can simply go to the guide, and the guide can give them some level of guidance and direction. And the guide's always going to be right. So,
Nice.
yes, can you follow the principles on your own? Absolutely. Can you do the work on your own? Yes. You can do all of the work that comes in the homeschool thing, and you could knock it out the park and you could be great at it. But who doesn't want a teacher's guide?
Man. Woo. And you can plagiarize that teacher's guide. Like God wants us to plagiarize those words because it's like, here's the answers, man. And just to and the word says, the Bible says what about doing what with the word in our life is to just saturate ourselves in it, really.
That's right. Hide it in
So
your heart.
it's
And it's
just
there. And
oozing
that's
out.
what I tell people, because you'd be surprised, Rob. I get that question often. Like, do you really need to have God at the center of your life in order for your relationship to thrive? And they're surprised when my answer, my knee jerk initial answer is no. They're surprised when I say no. They're like, "What? Really?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, no, you don't. You don't. If you follow the principles, it's going to work." Here's the advantage of having God. The advantage of having God is the moment that you don't have enough understanding, you're going to leave. You're going to do something. You're going to do something that's going to damage this thing because you don't have no teacher's guide.
Man. Wow. Man, and there's no shortcuts, right? I think about in high school, we used to try to steal the teacher's test results
Right.
so I didn't have to put in the work. It's
Right.
like, just give me the answers, man. And it was just those shortcuts, right? So there's not
Yep.
really a shortcut to this. It's a lifelong journey of relationships with our spouses,
It is.
and our wives, or, women are watching their husbands. And it's like that. It's like God calls us to be in a relationship and procreate and have kids, right? And it's like those are two of the hardest things in existence. But without the guide, it's really hard to figure out the answers. Like when I was incarcerated, I used to write scripture on the back of my on these little note cards all the time, right? And
Mhm.
just carry them in my back pocket. And it was like I always had it with me, but the more I spend time in it, the better. So I'm excited for you and what you're doing in your book called Overcoming the Man Laws. And I love the subtitle. It says, "For the man who wants to show the book again. For
Yep.
the man who wants to be his best despite what he was taught." Wow. You mean there can be unlearned behaviors?
Yeah,
What?
man. Listen, this whole book, man, is my journey of self-discovery in a few areas that I grappled with. And everybody, when for those who don't know the term man laws, right? There's some things that for many of us kind of govern the way we move as men, and they're kind of unwritten man rules, right? You can think of things like all the way from men don't cry all the way up the scale, right?
Yeah.
And what I learned was some of the things that I had held on to. I'll give you a good one in a second. But one of the things that many of the things that I held on to, I didn't realize were detrimental to me until I got married.
Mm,
And when I
mm,
got married, I realized that some of these ideologies, they are not going to be conducive to my success as a husband and father. And so the book takes 5 lessons that I've learned, and I break them out into 8 areas that I was grappling with: relationships, mental stamina, leadership, respect, faith, trust, altruism, authenticity. And I go through my journey of self discovery in all of those areas, man, around some lessons that I've learned. Lessons like it's better to be trusted than to be loved. Lessons like you shouldn't demand something that you haven't first developed. Like all of these things, and these are things that I'm learning in hindsight. So hence the shirt. In the beginning of the book, I dedicate it to my son and others like him in that age group. I say, may you achieve 2020 long before hindsight, because these lessons, man, I learned the hard way. I learned by banging my head up against the wall. I'm like, listen, I can share you some stuff that can keep you from hitting the wall, and so that's the journey, man, that I outline in the book. It has gotten some great feedback, and I'm grateful to God that one, that I was, even allowed to share in that way, and two, that
Yeah.
people are being impacted from it.
Yeah. So throw this out there to those people listening, like, man, that guy's got a book. Rob's got a book. I want to write a book. So what do you say to the person that's been thinking about writing a book? What does that do for you in your career?
Man, so first I would say just get started, right? Because a lot of people they and yes, if you go to these book writing seminars and different things, they'll give you some formulas and things of that nature. But listen, forget all the formulas, man. Just start writing. Start writing. As the thoughts come to you, write them out. You can worry about formatting and all that kind of stuff later. Just begin the process. Get it out. Start writing. Start writing. The beauty of a book, man, is that a book can speak for you in places that you're not.
Mm.
And so that's I've planted so many seeds, man. I've handed this book to so many people without them paying for it. And it's just it can go places. It's an extension of yourself in
Yeah.
places where you can't be, in places where it may land in places that you wouldn't even dream to imagine that they would.
Oh,
And so I
man.
think that that's the beauty of it. It also lends to, if we want to talk from a business standpoint, it also lends to some level of credibility around what you're talking about. So if I'm talking to guys about leadership, and I'm talking to guys about mental stamina, I'm talking to guys about relationships, here is a tangible thing that you can see. Hey, yeah, he went through a process. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let me see what you got to say.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I'm working with my business coach right now. And, he helped me kind of put this book together. There it is, the addiction intervention book. But
Indeed.
I speak in Christian men's retreats, right? And
Hmm.
this isn't always the book for that. So we're actually working on another one right now about the topic that God's called me to speak on, and therefore then the book is connected to the talk, which then
Hmm.
people want, and they change lives. And
Yeah.
it's just funny what a book will do for you. So like I said, I went to a book writing thing years ago, and the guy said, all right, I'm gonna give y'all this is worth your price of admission to this thing today. I'm gonna tell you exactly how to start writing a book,
Hmm.
how you write a book. And so we're all like leaning in. He goes, all right, you ready for it? One word at a time.
That's right.
I was
That's it.
like,
Just start
man,
writing.
I knew that.
And
And give
and
me
it's listen, man, it's so well, okay. I was about to say it's so easy. Let me not say that, because I don't want to downplay people's experience. What I will say, I'll say it this way, I'll rephrase it. You have so many options now that can help you with that process. One is right in your hand, which is your mobile device.
yeah,
Get out your mobile device and then go to your section. Most, whether you're on Android or iOS, everybody has a section where you can do voice notes. Talk it out.
yeah,
Then you could take that audio, dump it into another program. That program will transcribe it.
boom,
So there, listen, you can do this. Like, get your thoughts out there. It's not as tedious a process as you may think it is. And
yeah,
here's the thing. Let me say this: there is one person out there. Now, I'm sure there's millions, but there's one person out there who needs to hear what you have to say. I guarantee you.
that's right.
I don't even know you. Whoever's listening, watching, whatever the case may be, I don't even know you. I promise you that there is at least one person out there that needs to hear what you have to say. They need to be encouraged by your story. They need to be motivated by your experience. They need to be impacted by your journey.
Boom. There you go. And you're doing that right now on your own and with your wife. Y'all do it together. You do it separately sometimes. You do marriage conferences and retreats, and you guys doing retreats? I threw it out there,
We
but I
do
want
we do well, we haven't done our own retreat yet.
right.
That's on tap for us to do our
But you're
own. Now,
speaking at them.
we've
You're speaking
spoken
at
at
yeah,
retreats, right? But we have
yeah.
not
So
yet done our own retreat.
well, I look forward to when you fire up
Yeah.
your own, because that would be cool too. And
Yes, indeed.
but just good stuff. I mean, God brought us together, like I said, in Washington with through Brent's the Phoenix conference, and a lot of good dudes there, and just continuing to find other guys that are passionate about freedom and faith. And
Yeah.
that's why I started this show. I mean, it's addiction, freedom, and faith. And addiction's not part of everyone's story, but
Mhm.
freedom and faith can be and are. And when that principle is in the middle of that, now this is one of the things I like to always say too, that the letter I is in the middle of the word faith.
Mhm.
And so unless you define who you are, right, or what defines you, then you're just going to be a waffling person along the way. And you just never know who you're going to impact. I mean, people that tap into the podcast show or a retreat or a seminar, there's going to be some takeaway. And people always, I heard this in
Mhm.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They talk about if you share something you heard or learned within 48 hours of hearing it, you're more likely to apply it and remember it. So
Mhm.
whatever you heard, Oliver had a great bunch of good words of wisdom here. So whatever you heard, it's like, man, that really hit me hard. Go share it with another brother or sister and just say, hey, I heard this guy talk about this, whatever it was, these principles of good relationships, and you're more likely to apply it. So I want to encourage people to share it, as we say, like in the beginning of shows and end of shows. But if people don't hear this, like you said, it's not, we're talking about books, right? We're talking about
Yep.
podcasts, we're talking about retreats. If you know someone needed to hear this, send it to them.
Send it
Send
to
them the
them.
link and say, man,
Share it out.
brother, I thought of you. I love you. And I just want you to tap into this. And good
Bro,
stuff.
I wanna say this, man. I love what you're doing, right? And I think what people don't realize, right? When we hear the word addiction, our mind automatically goes in one direction, right? We think about the person who is an alcoholic, or the person who is in pills, or is on drugs, or that kind of thing, right? But I dare say, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here, but I dare say all of us suffer from an addiction, one addiction or another. It could be pride, it could be selfishness, it could be a whole host of things that we just can't get enough of, or we can't seem to pull ourselves away from, right? And so I love what you're doing, man, because the principles that you put forth in the work that you're doing, man, are applicable to those of us like myself who was extremely selfish and just could not step away from this self-centered attitude, right? That's an addiction. That's an addiction to what's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many of us who we don't classify what we're going through, right? So if you think about, I deal with relationships, right? And here's the thing, one key area in relationships to make relationships thrive is your ability to identify and meet the other person's needs. Many of us don't want to do that. We want our needs met, but we're not thinking about how do we facilitate that for our mates. And that's an addiction.
Mm.
That's an addiction to self, right? And so there's so many things that we have to get over as well, man. So I love the space that you're in, and what you're doing, man, because that space permeates everything.
Yeah.
Especially if we're looking at it from a spiritual realm, man. We're talking about, God creating in us a clean heart and renewing in us a right spirit. The reason why we got to pray that prayer is because we're addicted to something.
Mm. Yeah. True that, man. There's good ones and bad ones, and even the
Yep.
good ones, it's like keeping it in check. And we can go
Yep.
from, as addicts, people go from one extreme to the other. But the bottom line is, no matter what it is, we got relationships all around us, and they're always impacting us. Even tonight in our men's Bible study at church, we're talking about relationships. Where are
Mhm.
guys failing in their relationships? And sometimes refer to a guy's brain. You alluded to this earlier, kind of like a waffle. Right, back in your day, you're like, you took your little wildlife getting home at 4:30 in the morning. You took your marriage and put it in this compartment of the waffle. The daughters, and just kind of, we compartmentalize stuff so much as men. And at some point, those walls can't hold the compartmentalization anymore, and they fall and they snap. And so let's get ahead of the game and take heed to everything that was said today. And heck, go get yourself a copy of Overcoming the Man Laws. Where do they find a copy of that?
You can find it on Amazon. If you just type in my name, Oliver Marcel, it'll pop up. Or if you type in Overcoming the Man Laws, it should pop up. You can also get that on the website. You can also go to my website and get a copy of that. Now, the advantage of going to the website and getting a copy is that I'm going to sign it.
That's right. And
I
I'm just
sign
gonna say
every
this.
copy.
I don't know if this is true or not, but if they go to the website and buy it, you make a little more money than going through Amazon.
That is very true.
All right.
That is
There you
very
go.
true.
There you go. So
There's a
support your
coin or
local
two extra.
authors. Like Amazon's great, but support your local authors. Buy it straight from the source
Buy straight from the
and
source.
get
Indeed.
it signed, and that's cool stuff. Or just message Oliver yourself. Maybe you live near him. I don't know. Meet him for coffee, do a little signature, charge him $100 for a book, whatever. It's all good. So, but hey, appreciate the grind, man, and everything you're out there doing, and look forward to hitting the stage with you again someday.
Indeed.
And yeah, it's good stuff. So say hi to your bride, Denise, even though I've never met her before.
Will do, man. Do the same for me, man. I will definitely let her know, man. It's been a pleasure being on here, man. I was looking forward to chopping it up with you today.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time coming. I mean, but
Indeed.
we're gonna do this some more too. We'll figure out a way to kind of make this a little more repetitive to hit some people. But have a good day, brother, and appreciate you.
You as well, man. Appreciate you. Blessings on you, man.
Yep, you too.